Jadi sekarang kita sampai pada sesi sore. Ini tentang skeptisisme hijau dan hanya untuk memberikan konteks keseluruhan dari sesi yang ada dalam dua bagian. Mari kita kembali 6 tahun ke Stockholm ketika Hans Rosling berbicara tentang kesalahpahaman tentang dunia, dan dia menunjukkan pada saat itu bahwa dunia jauh lebih baik daripada yang dipikirkan kebanyakan orang. Tetapi jelas bahwa nilai tambah dalam banyak hal juga harus dibayar mahal. Kami telah mampu meningkatkan pengurangan harapan hidup untuk mengurangi kemiskinan absolut dan banyak hal lainnya seperti itu. Tetapi itu tidak datang dengan biaya nol seperti dalam pengobatan. Kami tidak memiliki efek tanpa efek samping. Dan efeknya mungkin memudar jika Anda melihat pada kemiskinan absolut misalnya, di mana Hans Rosling berpikir bahwa kita akan berada di jalur yang tepat untuk memberantas kemiskinan absolut pada 2030. Beberapa tahun terakhir terlihat arah ke belakang bukannya 800 juta, maka sudah naik menjadi 900 juta. Begitu juga dalam mencapai hal-hal yang perlu kita upayakan. Dan sangat sulit untuk menyampaikannya ke publik apa perbedaan antara efek, apa plus, apa kelebihan yang kita miliki, dan apa kerugian yang perlu kita ganti dengan sebaik-baiknya. Dan juga tidak benar bahwa kita sebagai skeptis atau ilmuwan mengatakan pada politik apa yang harus mereka lakukan. Mereka harus membuat keputusan, dan hal itu disebutkan dalam sesi pertama, bahwa kita juga perlu memastikan bahwa kita menjadi memberikan informasi rasional yang baik dan kemudian diserahkan kepada politisi, kemudian untuk membuat keputusan berdasarkan itu, dan secara umum tidak mengatakan bahwa tidak ada alternatif. Adalah tugas kita untuk menginformasikan tentang pengetahuan yang dapat diandalkan dan tidak. Dan apa yang diminta gerakan hijau sebagai hal-hal yang menurut saya bisa kita semua bagikan sebagai orang yang skeptis. Kami menginginkan lingkungan yang utuh dan layak huni. Tapi apakah kita berada di jalur yang benar? Apakah kita dihalangi oleh kepercayaan populer yang tidak berdasar, dan itu akan menjadi bagian dari sesi ini. Dua adalah di mana keyakinan dan fakta populer seperti itu mempengaruhi keputusan politik, adalah tentang energi dan iklim, dan juga pada pertanian. Dan jadi kita akan memiliki dua sesi hari ini untuk benar-benar menjadi suksesi kita. Saya akan membahas sesi pertama dengan Lida, Ruishalme tentang energi dan tenaga nuklir, dan kita akan membahas sesi kedua setelah itu. Kemudian kita akan istirahat, tidak akan ada pertanyaan di awal pada setiap pembicara. Kemudian kita akan berbicara tentang pertanyaan dengan GMO, dan kita akan mengadakan diskusi panel di mana Anda akan memiliki banyak waktu untuk mengajukan pertanyaan kepada semua pembicara. Jadi untuk mulai sekarang, izinkan saya memanggil Lida untuk memberikan ceramahnya. Dia cukup terkenal karena ibu-ibu nuklir telah terlibat dalam banyak kelompok modern lingkungan, termasuk kelompok modern Jerman dan ekologi akhir. Dan dia akan berbicara tentang energi dan decarbonisation.
Should I keep the laptop here? So I would like to say thanks so much to Amardeo and for the Skeptics Congress for inviting me to speak here today. And I'm here today talking about the more specific title of my talk is Critical Thinking, because we want to be taking green energy goals seriously. So first I'd like to just say a few words about myself. Amardeo told you that I'm an eco-modernist. I'm a biologist. I'm a mother, I'm an environmentalist, and I'm many other things, just like we all are. I'm an avid hiker, and I'm nature lover, and I love sci-fi and Star Trek, and sausage dogs. Yes. So And the reason why it's also important to have an idea about who is speaking here today is that often when we talk about these topics, both on healthcare as well as environmental topics, is that people often they are not as interested in listening if they don't know why we're talking about them. They don't know what motivates us and what kind of values we share. Because as we spoke to earlier, there's this question about skepticism and policy, that we should not tell politics what they should do. We should inform them about the effects of their choices. And it should be very clearly communicated that when we talk about green skepticism, we talk about the value in green things, which is basically protecting the environment, maintaining diverse ecosystems around the world, that we assume this is our premise, that those things are something that we should protect. So actually this is sort of more unsaid when we talk about healthcare and alternative medicine more often, because there is also the value that we want to protect human health. But it's not as often, we don't actually feel the need to differentiate with that. But this is a core part of why we want to look at green topics in a skeptical way, because they are so important. Because it is vital to get environmental questions right. So many people think that often skepticism, as it was mentioned earlier, that we can be perceived as nerds and weirdos, but also that we can come across as we are only there to pick apart well-meaning ideas or point out to people when they're wrong. And as Professor Ernst very well said, we need to frame the discussion differently, that we can only be against quackery or sham treatments. We have to be for progressive healthcare. And this is a value. We are for environmental policies in energy and agriculture. So I think both topics are important, but I'm here today to talk about energy. And particularly then, when we talk about these issues, we will come to the uncomfortable situation that sometimes we have to do the skeptical thing and point out where these ideas are not really well founded in evidence. Because oftentimes we make quick gut-based decisions, and we have these intuitive perceptions about what is good for the environment and what is natural and what can help us reach these goals, but they're not always correct. It's not an error-free process. We have this inborn way of judging what is good and bad, and what things are risky and what are not, that have developed during a long evolution, that have been very useful for us, but in our environment that is filled with abstract information and complex problems, it can lead us astray. So we have this process of easily, if you look at risk research, listen to risk researchers on how we make these judgments, it's what's good and bad for health, for environment, what is risky. They will tell you that people always tend to have this overarching theme of inflating the feel of risk when it's something that's unfamiliar, when it's something that's outside of our control, when it's something that's artificial. So we easily find anything that ticks those boxes risky, whereas we underestimate risks that feel familiar, that we can control ourselves. So these kind of influences affect all of us. We can try to be more aware of them, but they live on in our culture. They become reinforced by what other people and what culture tells us. So this is how we end up with lots of ideas where we might have to come to the uncomfortable situation that we, by assessing them, we notice that they are not all correct. So when we talk about energy, this is most striking then with our most new and strange and unfamiliar form of energy, which is nuclear power. We have a more intuitive feeling to the familiar sources of energy that we use. We can sense them with our senses. We know that wind can be harnessed with sails, that flow of water, you can feel it, you can change it. We know we can feel solar effect of warming. We can avoid these risks as well. By going to the shade, we know that by burning stuff, we get energy, and we also get the drawbacks of, say, smoke. But we know how that is dealt with. You go away from the smoke, you avoid it. It's not scary to us. We do know rationally that it causes risk, that it has an effect on our health, but it's not an alarm bell that goes off in our heads. Really, that is something you should avoid and go the other way. But this happens a lot with nuclear power. Because we don't have senses for it, because we don't have we can't control it. They're only very trained nuclear engineers who have the practical know-how how to control the nuclear reaction. So it will always have this position of being a target of inordinate fear. So if you listen to risk researchers, I will quote Peter Sandman, for instance, saying, "The risks that upset us and the risks that kill us are two completely different things." Because as you see here, so in this graph, you have here amount of fatalities, human fatalities per unit of energy produced. And this is, these statistics is not a controversial question. Actually, you find them on published literature, you find them on statistics sources like Statista, in EU projects where they take into account energy externalities. So we fear nuclear power most of all, whereas coal causes an inordinate amount of the actual deaths. We know that coal is bad, but we're not exactly afraid of it. We just want to get rid of it because it's unpopular. It's not that it causes us anxiety, for most part, unless we talk about climate anxiety. But this is the kind of situation we're in. So I want to talk about what kind of requirements we should pose for green energy, what kind of things we need from energy in order to reach environmental goals. But often this discussion is hampered by the fact that this kind of risk perception, skewed risk perception, to start with, stops us from having a level-headed discussion, trying to look at the actual evidence and comparing things, because we have a very inflated sense of risk in nuclear power. So let's look at a few of the most common points where risk perception and actual knowledge are very far apart. So the most common must be that nuclear power has risks that are beyond consideration because of the long-lived, incredibly dangerous nuclear waste. This used to be my reason for being against nuclear power, actually. I thought that having this hanging risk on the necks of generations to come was just such a heavy reason that we should reject nuclear power, period. There was no justification for producing any amount of energy since it was so incredibly dangerous for generations to come. But then, as I stopped to reflect these ideas and I spelled them out loud for myself, it was really quite striking, because the thinking was this: nuclear, I just know that nuclear waste is bad, really bad. I don't actually need to go and check the data. How bad, to what degree, how. I just know already. It's logical to reject it because of this knowledge. But I'm sure you know, and I know from personal experience, that just knowing is a really risky position to take if we want to understand something properly. So let's look a little bit about what we actually know about nuclear waste. So in this chart, you have radioactivity, measured in relative activity. It's your typical kind of waste from a light water reactor, a very common type of reactor, and at the baseline, at level of 1, we have natural uranium. So here you see that at first the spent nuclear fuel will be very highly active. And then you see that quite relatively quickly the activity goes down, because when you have something that's highly active, It means that it will send out lots of radiation, there will be lots of decays, and quite soon you will have all the elements we have turned into other radioactive elements. And then after about 1,000 years, which is the blue vertical line there, you have material that is very comparable in its radioactivity to natural uranium. Now, at that point, for it to cause considerable harm to us, we would actually have to ingest it directly. And this, the same level of activity we see in natural uranium, which is sprinkled around the bedrock all over the world. There are hotspots and there are spots with less. It's also present in seawater, leaching out all the time renewed from the bedrock. But we don't really fear this natural uranium because it's natural. The difference in radiation is not the question here. At that point, at hundreds of thousands of years, which we consider nuclear waste to be so incredibly dangerous, it's not dangerous because it's like natural uranium, it's dangerous because of the step that we see that it went through power plants, it became artificial. So it's a perception. It's not actually as dangerous as we perceive it to be. And this kind of practical considerations for how it could actually cause us harm, you don't actually see detailed suggestions. People who talk about nuclear waste being too dangerous for us to consider nuclear, they don't have to tell or lay forward or make reports about practically how this harm would be conveyed to us. It's enough to insinuate that since it stays radioactive for a long time, the harm could surely somehow be conveyed. And this is a little bit similar, as many of us know from fear of chemicals. We know that if you tell a person that there are synthetic chemicals that in some dose can cause harm, and if they hear that it can be detected, it's very difficult to remove that feeling of fear and risk in normal people's minds when they hear this. You have to actually do lots of after processing to think that no, we need a dose that would make it a poison. And this is exactly the same situation for radiation. Yes, it will remain radioactive for hundreds of thousands of years, and we can detect that, we can measure it directly. But that alone is not enough to cause harm. We actually have to have a considerable dose somehow delivered to people for it to harm. So, the lack of suggestions of how this harm will come is striking if you actually look. Many people don't look because it's enough to just assume. But in Finland, in my home country, you actually have a geological repository for long-term storage of nuclear waste, and they have done externally reviewed studies, the best kind of studies there are, about what will happen with waste storage, what kind of worst-case scenarios we can conceive. And what they have found is that if we assume that there would be something fundamentally wrong with the casks that contain the waste, again, this is not likely, but if we assume that, and if we assume that nuclear waste begins to leak, we assume that people have forgotten everything about the waste storage site, there's no caution about it, no monitoring of any kind. We have people living on top, we have them drinking the groundwater which is flushed through the bedrock, and farming food on the worst possible exposure that they can calculate for those people would be on the magnitude of eating 2 extra bananas per year. So this is why I sometimes say that nuclear waste discussion is quite literally bananas. Because bananas are radioactive, very slightly, they have radioactive potassium in them, but you get a small extra dose from eating a banana. It's not dangerous, don't stop eating bananas. So, there's a lot of fear, but when we try to look at it realistically, we find that that kind of harm is very difficult to come by. So, we as skeptics, what I'd love skeptics to help people with is risk perception and considering the risk landscape. Because another thing we learn from risk researchers is that people completely tend to forget to weigh the risks of the alternatives. Not only that there's an important risk-benefit ratio to be made for each separately, but that people feel somehow that if they feel that there's this large risk for nuclear and we just
beresiko besar untuk nuklir dan kami hanya memilih untuk menghindari bahwa kami dapat mengembuskan nafas lega. Kami telah menghindari risiko. Kami memiliki semacam pilihan risiko dan ini tidak pernah benar. Tidak pernah ada sesuatu yang tidak beres. Jadi kami benar-benar perlu memastikan bahwa orang-orang belajar melihat landscape resiko. Mempertaruhkan semua alternatif. Begitu banyak orang berpikir bahwa membandingkan limbah itu hal sepele. Tetapi ini adalah penting untuk mengajari orang-orang tentang risiko yang harus kita bandingkan. Dan cara mengejutkan ketika Anda mulai melihat fakta bahwa energi lain membentuk mereka yang tidak seharusnya
can be order of magnitude larger, they cause vastly more health problems. They actually stay harmful forever, which is the case for many heavy metals. For the end of the universe, they will potentially stay exactly as harmful. And we have many industries that don't have any responsibility for taking care of the waste. They will end up in landfill somewhere and leaking to the ground, or go up in smoke into the sky.
Mereka akan berakhir di tempat pembuangan sampah di suatu tempat dan bocor ke tanah atau
causes more radioactive contamination than nuclear because you concentrate radioactive trace elements in coal ash and you spread them into the environment. But this is not really, this is not as scary. So, it's really time to try to make these comparisons from an accurate evidence-based level. And here, it's really surprising to many, but it's worth taking this moment of changing the perspectives. What about thinking about what kind of benefits there are to nuclear waste? Because you have several. It's tiny, it's fully accounted for. Very rare to find an industry that fully accounts for the whole future of this waste. We can actually recycle or reuse nuclear waste. We have existing reactors today that are using spent nuclear fuel in your reactors and producing more low-carbon energy from that same waste and reducing it again by many times. Nuclear waste is also solid and easy to store. And as I said, we don't need to do anything, but simply the passive passage of time will make it less harmful. Okay, so let's move on to the next point where there's lots of gaps in risk perception. So, I'm talking about energy accidents, and I'd love to ask here from people in the audience, how many of you can name some of the largest nuclear energy accidents?
Chernobyl,
Fukushima, 3 miles.
Fukushima, 3 mil.
How many of you know Chernobyl?
Berapa banyak dari Anda yang mengetahui Chernobyl?
Yeah.
Fukushima?
Next, I'd like to ask,
selanjutnya,
could
saya
you
ingin
name some of the deadliest
bisakah
accidents
Anda
from other
menyebutkan
energy
beberapa kecelakaan
sources?
paling mematikan dari sumber energi lain?
A dam.
Dam.
Very good.
Bagus.
Bayontam. Right?
Bayontam.
How many of you knew about the Bangkiayo Dam?
Siapa yang mengetahui tentang
What about the Bayontam?
Seberapa banyak yang mengetahui tentang Bangkiayo Dam?
Here's
Jadi
a
di
bit
sini
like
agak mirip
the
dengan
situation
situasi
with
dengan
cars
mobil
versus flying.
dan
We know
kami
that
tahu
cars
bahwa
cause
mobil
way more
menyebabkan lebih banyak
deaths.
kematian.
But we're not
Tetapi
really
kami
afraid
tidak
of
benar-benar
driving.
takut
But
mengemudi.
when a
Tetapi
plane
ketika
crashes,
sebuah pesawat
everybody
jatuh,
notices,
semua orang
and many people are
memperhatikan
really
dan
afraid.
banyak orang takut.
And
terbang
flying is
juga
also
merupakan
a
bentuk
more unnatural
perjalanan
form
yang
of
lebih tidak wajar
travel,
dan
and we don't have the same kind of control
kami
over
tidak
it
memiliki
as we do
jenis
with
yang
our
sama.
cars. So, the most
Jadi
famous
kecelakaan
nuclear energy accidents,
energi
Chernobyl, I'll
nuklir
just
paling
recap
terkenal
quickly for
adalah
the
Chernobyl.
context,
Saya
because
akan
many
rekap
people,
cepat
although they can
untuk
name Chernobyl,
konteksnya karena
they don't
banyak orang
necessarily know
meskipun
how many
mereka bisa
people were
menamai
killed.
Chernobyl,
So UN
mereka
has
belum
had
tentu tahu berapa banyak
almost 10
orang yang
different
terbunuh.
bodies
Jadi
looking
PBB
into making
memiliki
reports on
hampir
the effects of
10
Chernobyl,
badan berbeda
involving
yang akan membuat
three
laporan
governments,
tentang efek
Red
Chernobyl
Cross, and lots
yang
of independent
melibatkan
scientists.
beberapa
So
pemerintah
this is quite well
pameran.
known.
Begitu banyak
Out of the
ilmuwan, ini
120
cukup terkenal
emergency
dari
workers putting out the
120
Chernobyl
pekerja
fires,
darurat yang
30
memasang
of them,
api
about
segitiga.
30, died from
30 dari mereka
acute
sekitar
radiation
30
sickness.
meninggal karena penyakit
And then
radiasi
we
akut.
have
Dan
the immediate
kemudian
release of
kami
iodine
memiliki
in the first
pelepasan
weeks after
iodium
the accident.
segera pada
The
minggu-minggu
surrounding
pertama setelah
population
kecelakaan.
was not really even informed about
Penduduk
the
sekitar
accident. They
bahkan
were
tidak
not
diberitahu
protected.
tentang
They were not
kecelakaan
given
itu.
iodine
Mereka
tablets.
tidak
And
dilindungi,
this
mereka
led to
tidak diberikan
that this
tablet
iodine
iodium, dan ini
concentrated in
menyebabkan
thyroids of
iodium
young people And
ini
this led to several
terkonsentrasi di
thousand thyroid
tiroid
deaths in the
orang
decades
muda
that came.
dan ini menyebabkan
And
beberapa ribu kematian
thyroid
tiroid.
can be pretty well
Dalam
treated,
beberapa dekade
but
yang
we have
mendatang
had
dan
so
tiroid
far
dapat diobati
15
dengan
deaths
cukup baik.
from these
Tetapi
thyroid
sejauh ini kami
cancer
telah
deaths.
mengalami
So
15
these
kematian dari ini.
are the
Kematian
confirmed
akibat kanker
science-based
tiroid. Jadi ini
death
adalah
counts.
jumlah kematian
There are
berbasis sains
estimates
yang
that with more
dikonfirmasi.
thyroid
Ada
cancers
perkiraan bahwa
toward the
dengan
end of
lebih
the
banyak
lifetime of this
kanker
cohort,
tiroid
we could be
menjelang
looking at
akhir masa
160
hidup
deaths
kohort
all in
ini,
all.
kita
So
bisa
let's say
sampai
that roughly
160 kematian
we're looking
secara
at somewhere around
keseluruhan.
200
Jadi
deaths.
katakanlah secara kasar kami
Now,
sedang mencari di suatu
you
tempat
can probably
sekitar
imagine that
200
there have been
kematian.
energy
Sekarang
accidents
Anda
with
mungkin
more than
dapat
200
membayangkan
deaths,
bahwa telah terjadi
as we heard
kecelakaan
here
energi dengan lebih dari 200 kematian.
So
Seperti yang
here,
kita dengar di sini sebelumnya. Jadi
the first
di sini
place
bagian
tragically
pertama yang
is
tragisnya
for the
adalah
Bangkiayo Dam. It was in 1975 in China,
Bangkiayo Dam.
and 100,000
Itu pada
deaths is a
tahun
conservative estimate of
1975 di
those who
Cina
directly
dan
drowned.
150 kematian
I just
adalah
didn't want to make it any
perkiraan
bigger because you couldn't see anything of the
konservatif
rest.
dari
Imagine.
mereka yang tenggelam.
250 is another
Saya
estimate
hanya
of
tidak ingin
people who
membuatnya
died
lebih
of the
besar
famine and
karena
epidemics that followed. It was a really
250
horrible,
ada
tragic
perkiraan
accident
lain dari yang
that
Anda
was also
tahu.
kept in the dark
Orang yang
largely
meninggal
for
karena
several
kelaparan
decades.
dan wabah yang
Terrible
mengikutinya
story.
adalah kecelakaan
But we
tragis
also
yang
have
sangat mengerikan.
coal
Itu juga
power here next
disimpan
in the London
dalam
smog in the 50s,
kegelapan
where
sebagian
suddenly
besar
you had
selama
air
beberapa
pollution
dekade
pooling over London
cerita yang
and thousands of
mengerikan.
people died.
Tapi kami juga
Even
memiliki batu
more
bara
thousands,
bertenaga batu
tens of thousands got
di
injured and
tahun
asthma
50-an di mana
other symptoms
tiba-tiba ada
afterwards.
memiliki
Then you have two
polusi
more dams.
udara
You have
yang
a dam in
memiliki
India
dua bendungan lagi
and a
di
dam in
India
Italy
dan
in the
Italia
60s
pada
and
tahun
70s.
60-an dan
And then you
70-an. Dan
find two
kemudian Anda
really
menemukan
tragical
dua
mine
kecelakaan
accidents
tambang
from
yang
the
sangat tragis dari
earlier
awal
half of the 20th century,
awal
the
abad
Bengzi
20
and
Bang
Couriers in
melihat siapa
France
yang
and China. But then you come back to
karir di
the
Prancis
more
dan
modern
Cina,
day.
tetapi kemudian Anda
There's
kembali ke
UFA
zaman yang lebih modern.
explosion and
Dan
San
ledakan
Juanico
UFA dan San
and
Juanico
Guadalajara are all gas
Guadalajara
explosions
atau
in
ledakan
the
gas di
80s and
tahun
90s.
80-90-an.
They all
Mereka
killed
semua
more people
membunuh lebih
directly,
banyak orang
several
secara
hundred
langsung,
people,
beberapa ratus
and
orang,
injured thousands. Many of
dan
these
melukai
don't have
ribuan
injury
banyak
counts.
dari
They will only
tidak
give you
memiliki akun
information about
cedera.
deaths. But then you have the
Tapi
Soma mine
kemudian ada lagi kecelakaan
accident,
di penambangan
a fire in a
Soma dan
mine in
kebakaran di
Turkey
sebuah
in
tambang di Turki
2014.
pada
300 people
2014.
died
300
immediately.
orang meninggal seketika.
Now, who of you have heard
Siapa di antara
of
kamu
Soma
yang
mine
pernah mendengar
fire?
tentang api pertambangan
So
Soma?
these are
Jadi ini adalah
accidents that are more
kecelakaan yang lebih
recent and
baru
more
dan
deadly
sejauh
by
ini
far
lebih
than the
mematikan
Chernobyl
daripada
accident.
kecelakaan
And
Chernobyl, dan
most of us are not
kita
aware of them.
kebanyakan tidak
I didn't know more
menyadarinya.
than two of
Saya
them
tidak
until
mengenal
very recently when I
lebih dari
started
dua dari
looking
mereka
into it.
sampai baru-baru ini.
So
Ketika saya
here
mulai,
clearly
jadi
there's a
sini jelas
difficulty
ada
in
kesulitan
how risk
bagaimana
perception
persepsi resiko
makes it
membuat
seem so
tampak
much more
jauh
dangerous because
lebih
we know of
berbahaya
one type of
karena
accidents,
kita
but don't know
mengetahui
about
satu
any of
jenis
the other ones.
kecelakaan. Saya tidak tahu tentang yang lainnya.
But then you'll say, what about the
Kemudian
environmental
Anda akan
effects? Many
mengatakan
people
bagaimana
fear
dengan
nuclear
dampak lingkungan
because
yang
they think
ditakuti
of
banyak
the
orang
horrible
terhadap nuklir,
wastelands that will
karena mereka
live
memikirkan
after.
tanah terlantar
That
yang
Chernobyl, you
mengerikan.
can't live
Mereka
in the
akan
30
pergi setelah
kilometer
Chernobyl
area
itu,
around it.
Anda tidak dapat tinggal di
So
area
here,
3
there's also
kilometer
research on
sekitarnya.
what happened
Jadi di
actually
sini
as a
juga
result
ada
of the
penelitian
evacuation.
tentang apa yang sebenarnya
And
terjadi
you know that there are people
sebagai
who
akibat dari evakuasi, dan
lived
Anda
in the
tahu
rural areas here in
bagaimana
Chernobyl.
bahwa ada orang
And when they
yang
were
tinggal di
evacuated
daerah
to larger
pedesaan
cities,
ketika mereka
they were actually,
dievakuasi ke
the
kota-kota
result was
besar,
health harm
akibat sebenarnya
from air
adalah
pollution
kerusakan
in a larger
kesehatan dari
city.
polusi udara
They
di
would have been
kota
better
mereka
off
yang lebih
had they
besar.
been allowed to stay
Mereka
in their
akan lebih
homes.
baik jika mereka diizinkan untuk tinggal di
There's
rumah mereka.
Now, as a result of them
Sekarang,
moving out, nature
ada
has taken
akibat dari
over, and there are
perpindahan
all
alam telah
more than
mengambil alih,
400
dan mereka
species of
semua lebih
vertebrates
dari
living
400
in the
spesies
area,
vertebrata
thriving populations of
yang
these.
hidup di daerah
So it's
populasi
clearly
ini. Jadi
a
jelas
very different picture from
gambaran yang sangat
what we
berbeda dari
have
apa
absorbed
yang-
culturally.
apa
I at
yang
least thought it was
kita
a
serap
barren,
secara
ghost-like
budaya.
wasteland.
Setidaknya aku
So these kind of
menilai itu
risk perceptions
wasteland,
really take us astray when
hantu yang mandul.
we are looking
Jadi
at what kind of
persepsi
choices we
risiko
should
semacam
do
ini
with our
benar-benar
energy
membuat kita
policies.
tersesat.
So Fukushima,
Ketika kita
the more
mencari
recent
melihat
accident,
pilihan
actually
seperti apa
released
yang
so
harus kita
little
lakukan untuk
radiation all in
kebijakan
all
energi kita. Jadi
that there are no health
kecelakaan
or environmental
sebenarnya
effects expected from
benar-benar
it.
sangat sedikit
Based
radiasi
on
sehingga
the
tidak
best
ada efek
possible science
kesehatan
that we have,
lingkungan yang
it's
diharapkan
simply
dari
too low.
berdasarkan
But the hasty
pengetahuan
reaction to it,
terbaik
the
yang kita
fear and
miliki.
the
Ini
evacuation
terlalu
already killed
rendah, tapi reaksi
1,600 or
tergesa-gesa
2,000
terhadap
depending on how you
ketakutan dan
calculate.
evakuasi telah membunuh
And
1.200
the reaction in
atau
Germany
2.000.
alone
tergantung
on
pada
closing down nuclear plants
bagaimana Anda
has so
menghitung
far,
reaksi
between
di
now
Jerman
and
saja.
Fukushima,
Pada penutupan
caused
pembangkit
4,600
nuklir masih
deaths. There
jauh
was just a paper
dari
out
sekarang.
about this in the past month. And
Dan
the rest of
Fukushima
Europe is on track.
menyebabkan
If they will
4.600
continue
hanya
reducing
sebuah
nuclear,
makalah
they're on
tentang
track
itu
with
di bulan
increasing
lalu.
deaths by
Dan
100,000.
Eropa,
because air pollution is just so much deadlier, and there
mereka
have been
berada
no
di jalur yang sama
good
dengan
solutions
peningkatan
to
kematian
replacing
hingga ratusan
nuclear
ribu.
with clean energy.
Karena polusi
So,
udara
we
jauh
need
lebih
to
mematikan
define
dan belum ada solusi yang
green
baik untuk
goals
mengganti
for
nuklir
energy.
dengan
We
energi
can't
bersih.
rely on this fear. We have to have these discussions about waste and
Jadi kita perlu
accidents to try to get to a
mendefinisikan
place where we
tujuan
can look at the
hijau
evidence
untuk energi.
and see
Kita bisa
what kind of
mengandalkan
choices have
resiko
what kind
pada
of effects,
ketakutan ini.
instead of
Kita harus
ruling
mengadakan
something
diskusi
out
tentang
to begin with
pemborosan
as too
dari
scary.
kecelakaan untuk mencoba
So this
mencapai
situation
tempat
we're
di mana
in,
kita dapat melihat bukti
our
melihat
carbon
peluang
emissions are
seperti
only
apa
rising.
yang memiliki efek
We need to
seperti
get
apa daripada
down quickly.
menghasilkan suatu.
If
Jadi
we
ini
look at expert
situasinya.
scientific organizations
Kita
like
berada di
IPCC
dalam
or
kita,
International Energy Agency,
emisi
they
karbon
will
hanya
actually
meningkat,
tell you
kita
in
perlu
many
turun
different
dengan
ways
cepat.
and in very long
Jika kita
reports and
melihat
so on,
organisasi
that we
ahli
really need
keilmuan
every
seperti
possible
IPCC
method
atau
at our
Badan Energi
disposal,
Internasional,
and then some.
mereka
They
benar-benar akan
are
memberitahu
relying
Anda
on
dengan berbagai cara dan dalam
techniques that have not
laporan
been
yang
developed
sangat
yet.
panjang
Carbon
dan
capture and
seterusnya,
storage on large scale in
bahwa
2030,
kami
getting us to
benar-benar
negative emissions by
membutuhkan
2070.
setiap metode yang
It's a gargantuan effort.
membuktikan. Dan
So clearly,
kemudian,
emissions being low in emissions
jadi
is an
jelas
important
emisi rendah
requirement for
emisi
clean energy.
merupakan
Here you
persyaratan
have
penting untuk energi
solar,
bersih di
hydro,
sini.
wind, and
Anda
nuclear being
memiliki
the lowest.
tenaga nuklir, tenaga
Wind and
surya
nuclear being
hydro
best.
menjadi terendah
But
di
you
nuklir yang
also
terbaik.
can't forget
Tapi
pollution and
Anda
health.
juga
It's not
tidak
very
bisa
green if lots
melupakan
of people
polusi
die.
dan kesehatan. Tidak terlalu
And here
hijau
is the same
jika
information
banyak
as
orang
in the
mati.
graph I
Dan
showed you
ini adalah
before.
informasi yang sama
But
seperti
basically we
pada
have
grafik
the
saya
safest are
tunjukkan
solar, wind, hydro,
sebelumnya,
and nuclear,
tetapi
which have very
pada dasarnya
comparable
kami
health
memiliki tenaga
statistics.
surya hydro nuklir
And then
teraman
the third aspect is something
yang
that
memiliki
is overlooked
statistik
way too often.
kesehatan yang sangat
And it's
sebanding.
land use.
Dan aspek ketiga adalah sesuatu
Why?
yang terlalu
Because
sering
land
diabaikan
use
dan
is
itu adalah
literally
penggunaan lahan.
a question
Mengapa?
of protecting
Karena
wildlife
penggunaan lahan
habitats.
secara harfiah adalah
Ask
pertanyaan
any
untuk
conservation
melindungi
biologist.
habitat satwa liar. Tanya ahli
We
biologi
won't have
konservasi manapun,
thriving
kita tidak
ecosystems
akan
without
memiliki
space for them to
ekosistem
live
yang
in.
berkembang.
The UN
Tanpa ruang bagi
Biodiversity and
mereka untuk
Ecosystems
hidup.
report that came out
Dalam laporan
this spring
keanekaragaman
highlighted the
hayati
number
dan
one threat
ekosistem
to
PBB yang
biodiversity
keluar
globally
musim semi
is
ini
changes
menyoroti
in land
ancaman
and
nomor
sea use.
satu terhadap
This is huge.
keanekaragaman hayati.
If we use
Secara
a
global
lion's share
adalah
of the natural habitats left,
perubahan penggunaan
we won't
darat dan
have
laut
any
yang
more
sangat besar.
lions.
Jika kita
This is really the
menggunakan
practical issue.
bagian
We can
singa
get
dari
climate change
habitat
even.
alami yang tersisa,
Let's say we
kita
somehow
tidak
get
akan
climate
memiliki
change
singa.
completely
Ini benar-benar cara
under
praktis yang kita
under
dapatkan
control.
perubahan iklim,
But
bahkan
we've
katakanlah
used
kita
up
entah
all
bagaimana
habitats.
bisa mengendalikan
It's
perubahan
just a practical thing. We need to
sepenuhnya.
have land over. So this gets overlooked too often, and one way to look at it
Tapi
is
itu
power
hanya hal yang
density,
praktis.
shown here in
Kita
the table.
perlu
So
memiliki
basically,
lahan.
how much
Jadi ini terlalu
electricity
sering
you can produce
diabaikan dan
per
salah
land
satu
area.
cara untuk melihatnya adalah
And
kepadatan
you can
daya
see the
yang
reason
ditunjukkan
why
di sini. Jadi
fossil
pada
fuels have
dasarnya
been
berapa
the
banyak listrik yang dapat Anda hasilkan
source of
per
choice
luas
for
lahan,
all
dan Anda
societies that
dapat
they have
melihat
developed because they
alasan
are
mengapa
such
bahan
a
bakar fosil
much more
telah
easier
menjadi
source of
sumber
power. You
pilihan
have
bagi
a
semua
denser,
masyarakat
it's
yang telah
easier,
mereka
quicker,
kembangkan.
cheaper to get
Karena
lots of energy out of them. But clearly they have these huge other drawbacks.
lebih
But nuclear
mudah,
power
lebih
doesn't suffer from
murah,
these
dan
drawbacks.
untuk mengeluarkan
And
banyak energi
while
darinya.
we really need
Dan
all the
sementara
tools
kita
at our
benar-benar
disposal for the
membutuhkan
carbon
semua
emission
alat yang
goals,
dapat
we also
dibuang
need
untuk
to be
tujuan
careful
emisi
about
karbon, kita juga
being
perlu
as
berhati-hati
efficient as we
untuk
can
menjadi
with both our
seefisien
land use
mungkin
and
dengan
emission,
penggunaan
bringing
lahan
emissions
kita
down.
dan
So it's not a question
dalam
of
misi menurunkan
let's
emisi.
choose
Jadi
only
ini
this
bukan
one which we
masalah.
like and
Mari
then
pilih
exclude
yang
the others.
ini saja yang kita suka, dan
Because
kemudian
there's also a fourth aspect I'd like to add,
karena ada juga aspek
which is
keempat yang ingin saya tambahkan,
the
yaitu
practical
keberhasilan
success, the
praktis
practical
sebagai
results.
hasil
Where can we
praktis
see that
di
we
mana
have
kita
actually
bisa melihatnya.
made this
Kami
true? Where
sebenarnya
have we
telah membuat
decarbonized
ini benar,
societies?
di mana kita telah
And here
mendekarbonisasikan
we really
masyarakat.
have
Dan di
the
sini
best track
kita
record
benar-benar
for nuclear and
memiliki
hydro.
rekor
If
terbaik
you look at
untuk
Europe,
nuklir dan hydro.
and the lowest
Jika
emission
kita
electricity
jika Anda
produced
melihat Eropa dan
is in
emisi
Norway,
listrik terendah
Sweden,
yang dihasilkan
France,
di Norwegia,
Switzerland, and
Swedia,
Finland,
Prancis, Swiss, dan Finlandia,
all those
semua
countries either
semua
use
negara
significant amounts
tersebut
of hydro,
menggunakan
significant amounts of
sejumlah besar
nuclear,
hydro
or both.
nuklir untuk keduanya.
So these, you can't
Jadi
ignore
Anda
these
tidak dapat
huge
mengabaikan
powerhouses
pembangkit
of low carbon energy.
rendah karbon ini.
And then there's the problem
Dan
that we are
kemudian
not
ada
only looking
masalah
at
bahwa kita
electricity,
tidak hanya
we actually
melihat
have an
listrik.
even larger
Kami
topic.
sebenarnya memiliki topik yang lebih besar.
In order to decarbonize the whole society, we also
Karbonisasi
need to
seluruh
decarbonize
masyarakat.
heating
Kita juga perlu
transport.
mengkarbonisasi
We also need to see to it that we have access to clean drinking water in the future, and we can do that if we have plentiful clean energy by desalination. We need to help our industries, our heavy chemical industries and other industries, to become less resource intensive, to increase recycling, to free more natural habitats, less mining, less need for resources. But increased recycling also needs increased amounts of clean energy. We also want to lift people from poverty, and we want to be able to boost clean energy the most in order to get to these green goals. So, the question is really, what is the way we want to choose? So this is a graph from Staffan Quist, a Swedish nuclear engineer from the MIT who wrote a book together with Joshua Goldstein, a professor in international relations, on how some countries have solved climate change and others can follow. Basically, it shows you the data that you can find in many forms, in many places, and looking at emission reductions. Not only the Germany's path, which you can see in grey as the Energiewende, not only did it add air pollution deaths that could have been avoided, it only also resulted in a situation where they haven't significantly reduced their carbon emissions. So is this something that we should take seriously? Is decarbonization a goal that is actually important to us? Do we want to protect human health? Do we want to protect wildlife habitats? Do we want to minimize land use? These are really important questions that we need to ask, and we need to try to look for the answers, looking on the evidence and not based on assumptions or risks that we imagine are there. Because we have seen countries like France and France and Sweden have used nuclear power to decarbonize their societies already in the 70s and 80s, and they have stayed on those low levels ever since. There are other places like Ontario and the European countries I mentioned earlier. So we should really get smart, we should listen to the scientific experts, and we should help people start evaluating these topics as a risk landscape, not as let's start by excluding something and then figure out how we can solve the rest. We need to give human health, environment, and the future of the planet the respect it deserves.
Penghormatan yang layak dan melihatnya dari sudut pandang skeptis.
So,
Jadi,
that's all I have to say.
Yang ingin
Thanks so
saya
much for listening.
Terima kasih banyak.